Ever feel like you're just skimming the headlines, like when you're prepping for a big meeting or just trying to stay informed?
Yeah, definitely. Happens all the time.
Right. You've sent us a ton of material on Hurricane Helene, and it's a lot to unpack. So today we're doing a deep dive, going way beyond those headlines.
Getting into the nitty-gritty, I like it.
Okay, so Hurricane Helene. This wasn't just another storm. We're talking major devastation across the Southeast U.S. Over 100 lives lost, thousands displaced. North Carolina and Tennessee got hit especially hard, from what I understand.
Yeah, and the human cost is really what you highlighted in the material you sent over. Seeing those images, reading those stories, it really drives home the impact. Homes completely destroyed, communities left in the dark with power outages, and the search and rescue efforts still ongoing. It's heartbreaking.
Absolutely. And one thing that really jumped out, reading through everything you sent, was the debate surrounding the government's response. A lot of back and forth about whether the aid has been enough and whether it's been quick enough.
Right, and it's interesting you've included a real mix of opinions on that,
Mm.
which is important. It's a complex issue, and anytime you have a disaster of this scale, you're going to see these questions raised. Logistical challenges, funding issues, bureaucracy.
Mm.
It's never going to be perfect, right?
Of course not. Of course not. It's easy to, point fingers, but the reality on the ground is complicated.
Exactly. And one thing that I thought was really insightful was a report you shared from Name of Source. They were talking about the difficulties relief organizations are facing trying to access some of the more remote areas hit by the hurricane.
Oh, interesting. I don't think I got to that one.
Yeah, they were really highlighting the need for a better coordination between different agencies, making sure everyone's on the same page. Because those details, they really matter when you're talking about getting help to people who need it most.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, switching gears a little bit here, you also included some pretty thought-provoking pieces about the connection between Hurricane Helene and this bigger conversation about climate change.
Yeah, and it's something we see more and more with these extreme weather events. The material you selected definitely reflects that. There's a growing consensus among scientists that warmer ocean temperatures are fueling these more intense hurricanes, making them more frequent as well.
And more destructive, I imagine.
Exactly. You actually sent over a study from Name of Source that I found really interesting. They've been analyzing ocean temperature data over the past 50 years, and the correlation they found between rising temperatures and the intensity of Atlantic hurricanes is, well, it's hard to ignore.
Wow. 50 years worth of data. It really makes you think about the bigger picture, doesn't it?
It really does.
So we've talked about the immediate aftermath of the hurricane, the government's response, this link to climate change. But what happens next? Your research also delves into the long-term recovery process, and I think that's something we need to talk about.
Yeah, for sure. Because even when the initial shock starts to fade, the long-term impact on these communities, it's huge. We're talking about rebuilding homes, schools, businesses. It's a massive undertaking. And it's not just about the physical rebuilding either.
You're right, you're right. There's the economic side, the emotional and psychological effects.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And those can be some of the hardest to recover from.
Oh,
There was actually an interview you included with a psychologist who's been working in those affected areas. She talked about the lasting trauma these events can have, particularly on children,
mm.
the need for mental health support in those communities. It's going to be there for a long time.
It's so important and something we often forget about when we think about, disaster relief. We focus on rebuilding buildings, but rebuilding lives, that takes time.
It really does.
Well, this has been a truly insightful deep dive, and I have to say I've learned a lot. For those of you listening, I hope this conversation has given you a more complete understanding of Hurricane Helene and its impact, beyond just the headlines.
And I'd add, as you go about your day, as you're thinking about everything we discussed, here's something to consider. If these kinds of extreme weather events are becoming more frequent, as that research suggests, what can we be doing to prepare? Are we doing enough to mitigate these risks in the future? Is something we all need to be thinking about.